Well, hello. How are you? What is the word? What is going on? How you feeling? How you feeling? What is going on out there? I'll just give it a couple of seconds for people to filter in, and we will get started. Hey. All right, that's a lot better. We are in, we are starting the thing, and I am saying hello. What's going on, everybody? This is Solar Gray, the Cinematic Sorcerer, coming at you from the Wizard's Tower. And man, I'm seriously trying to get through this week. I'm actually, hang on. Yeah, man, I'm seriously trying. Cool, that worked. Just checking my audio levels and all that stuff, making sure that we're here, and welcome to the Dark Side of the Room. This is the show where we talk about so many different things. We talk about, what do I gotta say? Games, hobbies, ways that this stuff can influence your life. Excuse me. Oh man, yeah, we're talking about belching. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so I wanted to talk to you guys about some, really fun stuff that we do, that we can do, that we're out here doing, and all that stuff. But first, I got to do the announcement part and all that jazz, which is if you guys want to be part of the conversation, I would really like you to do that. But, Solar, I hear you say, how can I do that? There we go. How can I do that? How can I be part of the show? Well, that's easy. All you got to do is leave a comment right here, right there. And of course, how can I put this? Leave a comment right down there. It should come up on the screen like here. And of course, you can also subscribe to the channel, help keep our lights on and all that jazz. And of course, send us an email at backinthedeck@gmail.com. It's BACKINTHEDECK at gmail.com. And hit me up on Twitter at backinthedeck, Instagram at backinthedeck. Y'all know the social media things and all that stuff. And hey, if you're watching right now on YouTube, hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit all that stuff that you would normally hit and all that jazz. Again, this is the stuff that we do and that we like talking about. So, also, we do have a Patreon and all that jazz, and there's a lot to the Patreon, so email me for some details. As little as $1 a month, and it goes all the way up to $100 a month. But really, yeah, we're looking for the people to throw in what they can, especially to help out with our community outreach stuff that's been hurting a little bit because of COVID and all that jazz. So we can talk about that on another show. Today, I want it to be a little more positive and talk about a few things. So, let us calm down the music. You can wrap it up, little Mr. Music. There you go. All right. So, I'm glad you guys are here with me today, and I'm glad that we are able to talk about a few things. Now, I wanted to talk about a lot of stuff because I talk about a lot of stuff all the time. Okay? And I mean like all the time I'm talking about a lot of stuff. And I really have to get a hold of Twitch to be like, "Look, man, you have to update your chat stuff cuz I never know how many people are watching. My dashboard is like never caught up. It's a thing." But today we are going to be talking about the beginnings. Okay? Starting the hobbies, starting new things, and what to expect. I've been seeing a lot of videos on the new year. Yeah, I'm checking my phone for a couple of things because people will what people will. And yeah, so there's that. And I have noticed a major theme in a lot of the videos that have been coming up on my feed, and it is the 5 things that I wish I knew before I got started. And I'm like, that does give me a lot of stuff. And I was talking with my girl a little earlier today, um, about a couple of things. Specifically skill levels, the beginnings of stuff, and yeah, there's a lot to these things. There we go. Yeah, there was a lot to these things. Um, I want to start by saying, all of this stuff that we talk about seems pretty all encompassing. Okay. And one of the reasons it does is because everything new seems to be all encompassing. New job, new school, new position, new place to live. Um, just new all over the place. And when it comes down to this stuff, Um, huh. Wow. Well, thank you guys. Thank you guys. I'm checking out who's in the chat right now, and we've got not just a theme park, but my favorite theme park watching us. So, major shout out to my people on the Twitch like Caxips 06, Sofa King Super, the King of Living Room Furniture, Clever Little Vixen, and the new person in Six Flags Magic Mountain. That is my favorite amusement park, and I'm not joking. Like I've been a Six Flags kid all my life. I'm not a Disney kid. I'm a Warner and Don Bluth kid, so I am all about that. Anyway, so like I was saying, um, getting along with the new stuff, right? Um, I talk with a lot of people who've never played D&D or never played a tabletop role-playing game. Um, don't play any board games beyond the old well, it's Hasbro now, but the old Parker Brothers and Milton and Bradley stuff like Sorry and Monopoly and Candyland and Shoots and Ladders. And don't get me wrong, that stuff is awesome. I remember when I was growing up, the one board game I wanted more than anything was Mousetrap. And my mom was like, you ain't putting all that stuff on my floor. No, no. And I'm like, I'll play on the table. Yeah, it's gonna end up on the floor and that's where it's gonna stay. So I'm like, all right, fine. Fine, I can deal with that. Whatever. Um, but when it comes to doing stuff that you haven't already done, we live in an age right now where new stuff seems weird and scary. Now, I make the joke all the time. I used to be with it and then it changed, you know? And I don't really like coming off like old man yelling at cloud, although I'm fully cognizant of the fact that I am old man yelling at cloud. Um, but when it really comes down to it, and I'm talking like the real stuff, the true stuff, all right? Things change all the time. And learning something new, at least in the United States over the course of my life, everything has seemed like a chore. You have to learn the new thing to keep up with work. You have to learn the new game to keep up with the meta. You have to learn all this new stuff to keep up with the Joneses, as we used to call it. Like it's one of these things where, man, can't I just relax? Can't I just like a book series without having to read the legendarium and watch the show and watch the videos on how everything I think or like is wrong? Can't I do that? I get it. I get where that's coming from. But today I want to focus mainly on starting new aspects of stuff and what gets in the way of that. All right. Now, I was talking with my girlfriend a little earlier. um, And we've been playing tabletop miniatures games on and off for about 10 years now. Okay. And I used to hang out with a group of people that were very elitist. And what I didn't know until about 6 months ago was they scared her off. Okay. They scared her off. And they scared her off doing all the things that I started this channel to get around. Okay, this is the stuff that I hate, and I mean I hate. It is all I am programmed to do. I hate. Um, which is hold new people to the standard of veterans. Okay, I hate that. And though they didn't do it often, the amount that they did got into her head, and made her afraid that it was going to happen every time. And you know what? Valid fear. Super duper valid fear. Okay. Um, there is so much that goes into a lot of these things. And it's like, this is stupidly valid. And working with her now, I'm really into games I've talked about on the channel, and I'd like to be able to play them with her, especially because with the Omicron Persei 8 out there, we're going to be spending a lot more time together. Like, real talk, we're going to be spending a lot more time together. Because I kind of see another lockdown coming, but that's just me looking at my wizard's eye and for our meeting tonight down at the docks. So I'm like, okay, so what is the complication there? And she has never really painted miniatures. And so that's given me the opportunity to take a look at something I've been doing for a very long time through the eyes of the beginner. And whenever you do something for a long time, like your job, it's really easy to forget what it was like at the beginning. Okay. When you were learning your trade, when you were learning how to do stuff. This is one of the reasons that I don't really like it when YouTube channels talk crap on their old material. Like, oh my God, looking at my old stuff, it's insulting, it's cringeworthy. I'm like, guys, it was your learning curve. And I talk a lot about having the expectation of expertise from the beginning and how that's a bad thing. And this is a great example because I found out today that my girl didn't really, like, she was put off by wanting to paint her miniatures the way that she painted them because she thought she was going to get ridiculed by people who didn't like her paint job. And I get that. I definitely get that. Um, so when it comes to that, I'm like, yeah, I kind of remember what that's like. And I know the irritation and complication I went through, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Okay. So when that comes down to it, I'm like, okay, so we're talking about paint schemes. We're talking about techniques because I watch a lot of instructional videos. Not because I'm trying to be the best around. No one's going to ever keep me down. No, 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 no. I'm not trying to be that guy. Okay. Um, I just genuinely like to learn stuff. That is my number one hobby is learning. That's what I like doing. Um, but since I watch a lot of it, she like she watches a lot of it. Um, because we don't live a life where I'm on my phone, she's on her phone. I pretty much like watch the stuff, my YouTube instructional videos and my Skillshare stuff on the TV in the room. So if she's in the room, it's going to be on. It's just one of those things. Um, and she was asking me about zenithal highlighting or zenithal undercoating and picking up contrast paints and picking up a bunch of other stuff. And I am an old school teacher. Okay. And when I say old school, um, I come from the school of build your skills up with what you got instead of learning with the top notch stuff. Okay. Example, I'm a big fan of people learning how to paint with average paint and subpar brushes, primarily. And I think I've talked about this before. My mom told me that you should never get the car of your dreams as your first car because your first car is the one that you're going to get into the most accidents with. Okay. And I mean little accidents. That's, you know, your first car is the one where you accidentally back into things at the gas station, that you leave in certain places where it's going to be pooped on before you know that it's not, you know, before you know where to put it. Um, you know, that first car you get is the one that will teach you how to take care of a car. It'll teach you engine maintenance because you won't do any of that stuff and you'll end up having to pay for the effects of not taking care of your stuff. But you have to learn how to take care of it before you know how to take care of it. So that's one of the things. Um, that is really one of the things I am really, really, really big on. So if people come up to me saying, you know, hey, I want to get some contrast paints, I've never painted before, and that looks like an easy way to do it. I'm a fan of going, look, just pick up some stuff, pick up some crap minis. It's not that hard to learn your trade. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't take shortcuts, okay? Because it's one thing to train to be the master painter, and it's another thing to paint your toys so you can go boo, 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 play with them. I printed up a one page rules team for my girl, and she's thinking like a red paint scheme. And I'm like, well, lucky for you that there's a company out there called Army Painter that sells red primer. And I'm a big fan of um, doing the stuff half heartedly so that you can play. And the more you do that, the better you get. But that brought me on to a phrase, and I hate rhyming, okay, guys? I really do. But when it comes to um, painting and the beginning, and we are going to get to the role playing games and the 3D printing and the designing, we're going to get to all that today. When it comes to painting miniatures, okay, I have a miniature in my hand right here. This little guy is kind of awesome. Look at this. Look at this little guy. Okay, that's a little guy. This little guy is pretty much fresh off the printer, and I haven't even put him on a base or anything like that. But when I look at this and I had to talk to my girl, I'm like, okay, the first thing you have to do, the very first thing you have to do when you're brand new, and these are things that stick with you all the way through, is determine your line of success. Okay. Set your standard from the beginning, from the very beginning. But how do you set your standard? You set your standard based on what you want, what it will take, and what you have to pay on that. All right. So I look up and I'm like, all right. So when it comes to these minis that I'm printing for you, I'm printing them for you because I want to play with you. Now the question is, do you want to play or display? Okay, that is the very first question. Do you want to play with your minis or do you want to display your minis? And she asked, well, can't I do both? I'm like, not until you get the skills. All right. And I pulled out a model that I painted last night. All right. Let me see if I can find a picture here. Um, yeah, I think I can find a picture of a model that I painted last night. And when it comes to that stuff, it's really easy to look at things going you know, to look at videos, and the videos will be like, "Oh no, this isn't that great. This isn't, you know, display and all this other stuff." And people will say a whole bunch of different things in regards to their stuff, because I really think that they're afraid of looking cocky. But yeah, I see people um on my YouTube feed that paint and design things way better than I want the skill to do. But I know what I want. I know how far I want to go with stuff. Um and you know, she was like, "Well, can't I do both? can't I play and display? And I'm like, not until you get the skills. I'm like, I showed her this model because I pulled it out last night, and it looks cool. I'm pretty happy with the way that this looks. And then I told her I put this model together for play, not for display. Okay. And then I pointed out what was wrong with it as far as display purposes go, and what I would have to do to get it up to the display standard. And I also let her know that I didn't care. I don't want to do that. That's not where I'm at, because in order to get things to a proper display quality for anything you create, it's a matter of time and skill. Okay. And the more you have of one, the less you need of the other. So if you are a super skilled painter, you won't need that much time to get your stuff to the display quality. You have the muscle memory. You have the knowledge of color theory. You know just by feel what consistencies your paint should be. You know what you have to work with. You know how to use an airbrush. All of these things are pretty high up there. And I'm like, well, in order for me to do display stuff, I don't really want it. I don't really want to go there. I want my stuff to look good enough to be seen on camera for when I do battle reports, and good enough so that somebody standing over the table I'm playing with know which models I'm using at what time. That's play. All right. So that's where I set my standards, and it's very rare that I'm disappointed um in what I paint or what I create. Um there's a lot of stuff I've made where people immediately just jump on, well, you should fix this, you should fix this, you should fix this, you should fix this. And I'm like, hey, you should fix it. I don't know, half of the stuff you're talking about, I don't know how to do. And frankly, I don't care. But that's my whole thing. So the very first thing you have to do is set your standard in a realistic manner. And by realistic manner, I mean, what is a reasonable step for you to take given where you are right now? That is the standard to set. I want my stuff playable. Now, I don't have the first minis I played. They were actually, I accidentally left them on a bus 17 years ago, and it was in a place that looked at the color of my skin and said criminal. So even when I went to the depot to say, all right, well, did you guys find a case that looked like this? They're like, we can't let you in to look for it. I don't know what to tell you. All those things that pretty much say, go away, you scare me. So I can't show you my first minis, but my first minis were terrible. Okay, they were just terrible. I literally took two spray paint cans. I lined up my whole army. I sprayed the spray paint, and it was like a bone color spray paint. And I'm like, shh, done. And then I sprayed them with a glitter finish. And then I put on like my highlight colors because, I was playing War Machine way back then. And they didn't come pre-painted, and I chose the Protectorate of Menoth, which was the religious army, and their paint scheme on the box were white, gold, and crimson. And I wanted white, gold, and blue. So I painted my blue highlights. I even mixed up a cool little metallic blue thing by putting blue ink into some silver paint. It was kind of cool. I looked at it, but they looked terrible. Okay, they were not good looking models. And then when I lost my whole collection and started rebuying from the top, I had learned some other paint techniques from my boss because I was working at a game store, and some of the other gamers that had never done miniature painting, but they did go to art school. So they showed me a couple of techniques. My boss showed me a couple of techniques, and they were telling me, like, dude, the old models that you had compared to these, it's like night and day. And I've gotten better over the years. But I got my stuff looking cool. And every year there's more products out there to make the learning curve less steep, or a lot more shortcuts. There's a company out there that I both adore, and I'm kind of going, okay, let's do some focus on the basics. And it's called Army Painter. and it's for people like me. Okay. Um, this company is honestly great. I love these guys because they are concerned with with painting up your armies so that you can play them. Get out there, get your army out there, paint it, and put it on the table. Okay? It doesn't matter what game you're playing, it doesn't matter where you're going to play it. Just get out there, paint up your minis, and we will make it as easy as possible to get your stuff to get your stuff table ready. And they are great at that. Okay, I like I said, I love these guys. I really do. Okay, there we are. Yeah. Primarily, let me just put this thing over here. No, I want to deny cookies. I don't like cookies. Um, yeah. Where am I at? I am here. Okay. Yeah. Uh it just said, yeah, I hate it. I hate so many things. Yeah, with these guys, okay, these guys are about getting your stuff painted up, put it on the table, call it a day. And in truth, that is where I think most people should start. And if people are going to learn to paint um, under me, I am cool with that. Um, these guys actually take a look at what's on the market and they make primers that are primarily in the color of most of the popular games. Like, all right, real talk. Games Workshop puts out Warhammer 40K. Those are the most popular miniatures that are out there, right? So these guys have primers in the colors of the main armies that Games Workshop use. So if you're gonna paint Space Marines, they have a blue paint that's almost Space Marine blue or a blue primer. So you just prime up your models, you do a little highlighting, and that's it. And they're actually pretty inexpensive. They also have, let me see if I can find this real quick. No, they don't sponsor this as much as I wish they would because they have a new product coming out this year and I wants it. I really want. Oh, there we go. Quick Shade. No, give me down here. I believe it's Quick Shade. Um, yeah, they have a product. There we go. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Boom. This stuff. Um, yeah, this stuff is Army Painter Quick Shade Dip. And essentially, you have your metallic paint, you have your colored primer, um, and you have your dip. Okay, so it's literally put together to be like your primer and your base coat are the same thing. You add a few details. You can dry brush if you want to. Um, and instead of inking or shading or anything like that, or dealing with little bitty details, all you do is you dip your model into this stuff right here. And I literally mean that. You put your model on a stick, you shake up the can, you dip it in the can, you pull it off of the can and you let it drain a little bit, then you put your model down on something and then it will dry and all the stuff that you want to get into the cracks and crevices of your models will be there and it's done, and then you just spray some matte finish on top of it and you are done. Like, they make stuff for when you have to paint 200 models in a weekend. These are the tools and I really like that, but I don't like that for bare beginners because it's a shortcut that held me back. Because I'm not gonna lie, I chose the army that I chose because it was mostly white and I could find white primer. So prime everything in the white primer, add my details, and then call it a day. So that's one of the things they got, and it's one of the things I like very much. And and if you've got the money, it'll be like less than $150 for everything you'll need for like 5 years. And that is a great investment, except for the primer, because, you know, the primer you can go through in like a month, depending on your stuff. Um, oh, cute, Red Hulk. I will use that tone. I will use the dark tone. I will use the soft tone. I will use the light tone. Okay, I will use any of those tones. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that kind of thing. But all of these products literally hit me exactly where I want to put my models. And I didn't learn that until I got out there and tried to learn some stuff. I've been trying to crack the code for one particular product, using my skills of chemistry and paint theory and stuff like that, um, to essentially mimic a product that's coming out next week. And then I'm like, wait, this is just nothing but shading, blah, blah, blah. I've already got some materials. Can I do it without spending the $7 or $8 on tiny amounts of paint? Can I do that? And turns out I can, but it also turns out that I prefer painting most of the stuff that I paint in the way that I've gotten used to painting. Um, but I'm all about getting one oh I didn't even realize I wasn't on screen. I'm really all about getting core um one core technique that you can always fall back to, and then learning stuff from there. Okay. I don't come from the school of my way is the way, and I honestly think that's a very dangerous school to come from. So that is where I sit on that. So as far as like, starting off painting miniatures, you can find a bunch of stuff. Like um most brick and mortar stores actually have something called called a bits box. Okay. And that is where you get half complete miniatures and all the bits, because when you buy miniatures they come on sprues like this, but there are more things on the sprues than you are going to use. So you always end up with a whole bunch of leftover stuff. And a lot of the people just donate it to the store. I know when I worked at a game store, it was $2 for a handful of bits. Just $2, handful of bits, and you're done. Um, and those are fantastic things to get started with. Because you don't really care about um you don't really care about what happens to them. They're pretty much garbage, which means you can practice your stuff on them, and you can practice on them, and then you can wash them off, hit them with acetone in a toothbrush or simple green in a toothbrush, and then you can reprime them and do it again until you get good at whatever it is you're trying to get good at. So you're great on all that stuff. Um, but speaking of bits, let's talk about starting off with 3D printing. Okay, that seems to be a really big thing now. These days, 3D printing on almost all levels, for games, as a hobby in and of itself, for art purposes, I'm a big fan of it primarily. And one of the reasons that it's in the program for the outreach program is because 3D design is the foundation for using MCAD, which is the foundation for machining. If you can learn how to use a 3D printer, you can learn how to use a miller. And if you can mill, if you can mill or do that 3D design, then you can build a future in video game design or machining for auto parts, plane parts, machines. Um, and robots may make them, but there's always work in the aftermarket. Believe me. Or sometimes you might like something and you need a part that you can't find. But if you've got the skills and have access to those tools, you can make your own part, call it a day. Um, but getting started with 3D printing can seem daunting. All right. I'm a big fan of resin printers. They are the closest thing to plug and play that I've seen. And that comes down to reading the directions, following the manuals. I've been experimenting with new resins, and I've had some luck here, not much luck at other places, but they're out there. And yeah, I spent the weekend re-establishing my 3D printing farm so that I can continue with the um so I can continue with the merchandising and the stuff for my patrons and all that jazz. Um And that has been a trip because I had to throw out everything I knew and start from the beginning and learn to follow directions instead of reinventing the wheel. Okay. Um, so when it comes to that, the stuff is actually pretty easy. All right. But just like when you start painting, it is a matter of setting your expectations. All right. It is really easy to set your expectations way too high. I know when I first started with 3D printing, um, the hype was they're like replicator machines from Star Trek. I didn't have the patience, I suppose. Um, yeah, I really didn't have the patience to wait for as long as it took to print up certain things. And don't get me wrong, all right? The stuff that I had access to versus the stuff that I wanted, completely different. And why? Because whatever your expectations are, they're very rarely going to match up with what you have access to unless you're independently wealthy. Okay. And I'm not trying to make anybody feel poor or anything like that. But I know when I first started doing 3D printing, I found generic copies of a bunch of stuff that I wanted, and that was my learning curve. Now, the technology over the past 5 years since I started has been a lot better. It has been a lot more user friendly. Um, Now, the market will show that. Okay, the market is like, oh my God, look at all this stuff. Don't get a 3D printer, buy our stuff. All right. But there have been so many more companies out there that design stuff that looks just as good, if not better, um, than the expensive stuff that's out there. And and if you have the printer itself, you have a lot more options. It is not the number one thing, it is not the best thing out there. Um, but it is a great tool to have with a whole bunch of really good benefits. Example, excuse me. The company Hero Forge allows you to create custom minis. Now, if you're in RPGs, as I am, it's really cool for when you can be in the same room with your players, to have sets, to have the castle or the village with the houses and to move the little minis and stuff. It's a much more immersive experience. And miniatures themselves, like if you go to a brick and mortar store, they're not that expensive. They're like $2 to $3 per model. Not a big thing. But to have the model that you want or that's closer to what you imagine, that $5 can easily turn to 10 with all the kit bashing. But there are companies out there like Hero Forge that let you design with their templates where you can go, oh my God, this is me. I actually designed a model of myself. That's part of the Patreon package. And I'm really happy with that. And the file itself was $7. Okay. But for that $7, I've already printed up like 300 to send out to places and to give away at conventions and things like that. Not to mention to use on miniatures games and miniatures boards. That's kind of cool. So getting started though, there is a lot of learning curve. There was a lot of mess. There's a lot of learning how to deal with the chemicals. And if you're doing FDM prints, i.e., the thing that comes with the spool, there are so many things as far as engineering goes that you have to learn. And as the technology gets older and older and older, better stuff comes up. I mean, that's just the way it goes. But these things are hobbies of precision. All right. And precision hobbies have a much steeper learning curve. Ask any engineer. I bring up engineers because engineers pretty much invented 3D printing as a hobby. But when you're a working engineer, you have an attention to detail and you can think on so many micro levels that this is easy. a person who's not an engineer, I again had to learn to set my standards. I had to take a look at what 3D printing was and set my standards based on what it was, what it'll look like, and how willing was I to compromise. Okay. And of course, speaking of that, I want to talk about role playing games. All right. Now, this is a big thing because a lot of the stuff that we have in regards to role playing games specifically is we have two standards where one is realistically attainable in time and another one is completely impossible because it's a different thing. I want to talk about the standard that's available in time because the Mercer Effect is something that people have been talking about for a while. Now, the streamers that you see, the best of the streamers that you see, the people at College Humor, of course, Critical Role, of course, Jocksex Machina, all right? All of those people are professional actors who have been acting and writing for decades. And they have been playing role playing games for longer. Actually, pound for pound, if you look at it minute per minute, they've played more role playing games than they have acted in places that would pay them to act. Okay? This is the example of expertise making something look easy. Now, there are some veteran role players on this channel in the chat, if nowhere else, okay? And when I say veterans, I'm talking grognars, all right? My people, okay? I'm looking at you, Red Hulk. I'm also looking at Sofa King Super. I'm looking at Fried One, Guten Tag. I'm looking at myself. And there are certain things in role playing that we know like the back of our hands, but we didn't always, okay? We learned that stuff from years and years of playing, years and years of learning how to learn role playing games, and years of making up stuff and making it look like we planned it the whole time. Don't at me, every GM does that. All right? Yeah, I mean, it's a real thing. So there's a lot of us that know the stats for every weapon. We know the content of everything that would be in an adventurer's pack and what it's generally used for. Um, but when you're starting out new and you're putting together your very first character, what what throws off a lot of people, and this is the overall theme, I guess you can say the motif of today's episode, is a lot of people get intimidated by not doing it right. Okay? By not painting right, by not printing right. You've heard me talk about this on the show time and time again, especially Red Hulk, Sofa King Super, the King of Living Room Furniture, Clever Little Vixen. A lot of people out there has yeah, I remember the Holy Avenger sword and the Vorpal Blade. The Vorpal Blade, I have not seen that in 5th edition, but it's out there. The Vorpal sword is out there. If you guys are new, the Vorpal sword is essentially a sword that would give you a +10 to hit and a +15 to damage by today's standards. It can cut through anything. It was essentially the fantasy lightsaber. But so many people are afraid of not being experts when they start. They look at, oh my God, I've got to learn all these stats. I've got to do all this stuff in order to learn how to play. And I'm like, no, you don't. That stuff will come. Just like, and I know this is weird because a lot of you guys aren't as old as I am. And that's not a slight. That's not a slight against you, okay? It's just my parents ended up having sex before yours did, okay? But there's a lot of people out there that remember the days where you could get a job with no experience and they would teach you what you were doing. All right. I know there's a lot of people out there, especially in retail, that didn't know the point of sale system until they got a job that taught them the point of sale system. You know, um, what it comes down to is once you're in, you can learn as you go, you know, and with 3D printing, tabletop miniatures, um, role playing games, martial arts, sword fighting, archery, construction, you can learn as you go if you get out of your own way and stop expecting yourself to have expertise. Okay. Now, I get it. Okay. And when I say I get it, I'm going to say this. I know where a lot of those expectations come from. When I was a kid, I was smart. Okay. My kid has what's called gifted child syndrome, which is people see your potential and they hold the fact that you have to learn anything against you as a character flaw. Like a lot of people nowadays with their with the world that we live in with cyberbullying and which is just another step. You know, it's another step from bullying, okay? It's I'm sure you're looking at me, you're going 45-year-old man, he's going to start talking crap about how cyberbullying isn't bullying. No, it is. Matter of fact, watch the last season of Cobra Kai and it shows what cyberbullying actually looks like. It's just another step to getting your butt kicked, you know? Um and people measure stuff today by yesterday's standards or people and I find that kind of interesting because people measure interacting with other people by yesterday's standards and they measure entertainment and stuff from the past by today's standards. It's so odd. Oh my god, that movie from the 80s is problematic today. Yeah, it is. It was kind of problematic back then. um it wasn't as problematic as we would find it today, but yeah, it was still thing. It was still there. Times have changed, as in whatever time it is now is not the time it was, nor is it the time that it's going to be. And just like when you learn something new, you know something today that you didn't know yesterday, and you'll know something different tomorrow. Okay? Um, Red Hulk 05 brings up a really good point when it comes to learning tabletop role playing. Learn your character first. And if you're wondering what that means, it comes down to this. Okay. I disagree with learn your character first. I think you should learn your character second. First thing I think you need to learn is what the game is. Okay. If you're sitting down playing D&D, you should know what a 20-sided die is. And a lot of people don't, which is why every role-playing game comes with, what is a role-playing game? What are dice? What are polyhedral dice? In the first chapter of every role-playing book I've ever picked up. um, but yeah, before you break the game, you have to learn it. And one of the best ways to do that is learn the basic fundamentals like I roll a die and add these numbers. The second is learn your character. I put together this character, but what can it do? But what a lot of people get caught up on, especially new people, is wanting to begin with optimization. Because that's what the videos on the YouTubes talk about, right? How to optimize your ranger, how to optimize your barbarian, how to optimize your Camarillo gangrel, how to optimize, and it's just like, hold up, stop. Can we get a video on just how to make one, how to play with one? Because if you start with what's optimum, and this goes all the way back to what we were talking about with painting, if you start with what's optimum, you won't understand the things that make it optimum. Okay? Um Again, it's the bump car. If you start off with the optimum and best car and you screw that up because you're new, how are you actually going to feel about yourself? And in this day and age, people feel pretty bad when they make any mistakes because they don't go, I'm new, I'm learning what I'm doing. they get voices in their heads that go, I gave you every opportunity. You're smart. You've got the best tools. You're out there in the best environment. How are you still failing? It's because they don't know what they're doing. And the only way to learn what you're doing is by trial and error or by instruction and trial and error. Okay? So when it comes to being new on any of these things, know that you are going to you're going to have failed prints. Okay? Don't worry about it. You are going to roll up characters that don't fit the campaign that you're in. Don't worry about it. You are going to paint a model that looks absolutely nothing like you imagined it, let alone what's on the box. Don't worry about it. Okay? You can always, what we do, how we actually learn, and what got us to a good point in our history as a civilization is we did the best that we could until we learned better. And then, once we learned better, the next one that we made was better than the last. Okay? Back in my day, we had these things called records and cassette tapes. And records were made out of plastic, and they had little grooves in them that what we call the needle would go through, and it would read the vibrations and translate them into sound. And I listened to some records back from the 1920s, and most of it was a tinny voice, a tinny voice, and it sounded terrible. Okay. And then I listened to some records from the 1960s, because my mom had a lot of records that she got when she was a kid back in 45s. And it did come with the and when I was growing up, we had these things called tapes. There is a massive difference in the sound quality between Modern Sounds of Country and Western from Ray Charles 1962 and Prince's Purple Rain 1985 and Pearl Jam's 10 1991. Okay, big difference between the three of those, and they're all available on vinyl. You can take a look. That's why we have remasters. Okay, as the technology moves forward and people get better at stuff, we look at things through new eyes. All right. I heard that they're going to be rebooting the 1980s and early 90s X-Men cartoon. The one I rushed home from school to watch. And I tried watching the old stuff again, and oh my God, it does not hold up. Not by modern animation standards. It looks better than the CalArt style, but it is very choppy, especially for people who can see animation better than I can because they've grown up watching great animation on the internet and playing video games at 60 frames a second and stuff that's actually less choppy than real life or this broadcast. Uh, but is it bad? No, it's not bad. If it was bad, I wouldn't have rushed home, you know? And I look at stuff with new eyes now because my skill of absorbing media is better than it was when I was 8. I can look at things more critically because I have more experience. And for you guys out there just learning role-playing games, this is what experience points are supposed to be mimicking. Okay, and your skill points in skill-based games like Call of Cthulhu, Vampire the Masquerade, whatever, that's based on I do it over and over again, and now I'm better at it. And that's where I'm getting at, guys. All right? There ain't nothing wrong with being level 1. There's nothing wrong with being a beginner. In fact, I adore beginners. Every master of anything was a beginner. When I first got into martial arts, I knew dudes who could jump in the air, do a backflip, and land on someone's head. I am not exaggerating. But they weren't born with that strength, those techniques, that muscle memory. They had to develop it. So In essence, whenever you're starting something new, be kind to yourself. All right? Understand that, yeah, everybody knows the 4,000 hours thing. It's become part of pop culture. All right? But 4,000 hours adds up to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 5 years. All right? That's how long it takes to learn a trade. It's you know, um and there are going to be people out there that aren't going to be kind to you as you're beginning. And you know what? They can take any of those cards and they can put those back in the deck because no one is born an expert at anything except for screaming and pooping. That's it. Maybe peeing. Screaming, peeing, and pooping. But literally, we have to learn how to breathe oxygen when we're born. That's why doctors slap babies on the butt. It's to get all that amniotic fluid out of their lungs and let them take their first breath of air. So if we have to learn to breathe, learn to talk, learn to walk, why do we expect ourselves to learn all of these skills that don't occur in nature, like painting? How are we expected to be masters at something that we invented as a species? Come on. Not at the beginning. We can get good. And there are going to be people out there that do make fun of you for how you paint your models or how you build your character or how you run your game. Here's the beauty: they don't have to play with you. They don't have, someone will. When I first started this channel, people told me that I should make this channel like everybody else's, that the battle reports I film should just be two people playing with a camera overhead. And I shouldn't talk about what it's like being new because they don't deal with beginner humans. And I'm like, then don't watch. Because there was a time that you didn't know how to play D&D. There was a time that you didn't know how to paint miniatures. Even there was a time where you were intermediate with painting and now you're an expert. But are you saying that you only deal with people that are on your level? So if I want to stay your friend as I have been for 20 years, I have to keep up? Like, I'm only worth how you feel about yourself? Come on. That don't work. That ain't the way life goes. You know, every person that you meet in life will be better at something than you and worse at something than you. That's what makes us beautiful as a species. And you are better and worse at stuff that you were better and worse at when you were younger. Okay? Growing up in the hood means I know a lot of rural people because we got grandparents and the hood was built on people coming over here in the Great Migration. So there was a phrase that I heard a lot, which is used to could. I used to could, oh man, I messed up this batch of biscuits. I used to could, no, I can't make those biscuits no more. I used to could, but can't no more, you know. Um, and that's fine. That is absolutely fine. Okay, if you used to could and you can't now, you'll be able to do it again. You can learn it again if you choose to. And that choice is based on either necessity or desire. If you desire to do it again, cool. If you don't, that's fine too. But be kind to yourself and don't beat yourself up, you know? A lot of people believe that progress, and this is one of the things that separates games from real life. A lot of people think that progress goes this way. Okay? That's not the way it goes. It is not a straight it is not an upward trajectory over time. What it actually is oh my god. Oh, Zenith. Nope, I dropped. Oh no, okay? But if you take a step back and look at that line, the place that you fall down the fifth, sixth, seventh time tends to be higher than the peak of where you hit before. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 100, you can it's very rare to go 1 to 100, even if you have the best tools and the best environment, have all the time in the world. Blah, 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 blah. All right. You might go from 1 to 6 and then drop down to 2. You might go, and then from that 2, you'll go up to 8 or 9 and then drop down to 5. Okay. Um, Hell, you might even make it all the way up to 6, drop down to 2, but then from that 2, you'll go to 7 or 8. Okay. You might even go to 11 because there is an optimal time for growth and all that stuff. But you can go all the way up to 11 and then drop down to 8. But guess what? That 8 that you just fell to is better than that 6 you achieved 6 months ago. And that is what learning actually is. That is what experience in life actually does. That is the realest part of learning. That's how we get good. Nobody that plays games in tournaments go undefeated forever. Okay? No one. No fighters, no game players, no quiz show people. You know, that is why we have different passing grades. Okay? I love people who go from a hard D plus, or, from a D plus to a B minus. I don't get on them for not having an A unless I see them practically apply whatever it is they have a B at in ways that a person with an A plus would. And I'm like, okay, you understand, you just aren't making that link. So let's get there first, you know? So yeah, but real talk. Hey, looks like Nerd Soul's here. What's going on? Y'all should really subscribe to his channel. Cause yeah, this is pretty awesome. But yeah, so real talk, okay? Realist of real talk. Whenever you're starting off at something, anything, don't care what you're starting off with. Don't worry about losing. Matter of fact, there is a saying in video game design: fail faster. Okay? Every time you make a mistake, every time you blow it, you learn how not to. In one of my favorite songs, it says, you've got to lose to know how to win. All right? So the faster you fail, the faster you get better. So fail faster. If you're playing a game for the first time, it's all right to lose. You take that loss and you go, okay, what could I have done better? What is it that caused me to lose? Or in the words of Ted Lasso, what do I have to learn here? And that's important. That is really important because I don't know what it is about 21st century America, but we seem to have cultivated this expectation of perfection from the word go. I've got theories. I've got lots of theories. Most of them involve capitalism, and I don't want to get into that. But I will let you know, with the living of a life and function, you are going to make mistakes. You are going to fall on your butt. You're going to lose games. You're going to lose encounters. It's real. Okay? Vixen's out there saying, I've made the same mistake twice. That's Batman's superpower. It's true. Well, no, Batman has made the same mistake twice, but he's never lost to the same person twice. Except the Joker, because the Joker's superpower is I beat Batman. But yeah, the thing is, every time that things don't turn out the way that you imagined when you started is a lesson. Sometimes that lesson is adjust your expectations. I will tell you something. I've been trying to learn art my whole life. I can't draw. And as a musician, I understand music. I understand songwriting. It just turns out that most of the things that I create, I don't like. I don't like my own creations, except for this channel and these shows. But the scripts that I write, I hate. The stuff that I draw, I hate. I don't like my own style. But that doesn't mean that my style is bad. It just means I create something that I would never eat. but I do like my cooking. um, but just because I don't like what I make, it doesn't mean that I give up or that I'm bad at something. It just means that I make something that I wouldn't prefer. And what I learned in the professional world, excuse me, is that you do your best and the customer will like it or they won't. And that's it. And a lot of the times that has nothing to do with what you did. And a lot of the times it does. But the only way to find out is to fail and find out what happens. I mean, in a perfectly just world, we would always